Hi everyone, and welcome to Jane Talks Real. I'd like to talk to you about a little show called Pretty Little Liars and how batshit crazy insane it is. It started off strong, but plot points were thrown into a blender and we ended up with a WTF smoothie. So here is how Pretty Little Liars wasted a great premise. Serious, major spoiler alert, you have been warned. Pretty Little Liars starts with 5 friends, Alison, Aria, Emily, Hannah, and Spencer, having a sleepover in Spencer's barn. It's a normal teenage girl sleepover until Aria wakes up in the middle of the night and discovers that Alison has gone missing. Fast forward a year and there's still no sign of Alison until a new family moves into her old house and find her body buried in the garden. After Alison's funeral, the 4 friends receive text messages from the mysterious A telling them things that only Alison would know, and so the mystery begins. On that premise alone, I was really intrigued and binge-watched the show to see A cyberstalk the 4 friends and the mystery behind A's identity unravel. The girls get dragged into a web of lies and deceit as they scramble to uncover the identity of their stalker before A ruins their reputations, their relationships, and their lives. It sounds cool, right? And for a while, it was. But this show flew off the rails with its convoluted storylines. I'm going to give you a quick rundown of one of the particular batshit insane plot threads which was way too complicated for its own good. This is Alison. She was wearing this yellow top when she disappeared, so when the body of a blonde teenager wearing this exact top was discovered, it made sense to think it was Alison, but it wasn't. The body belonged to Bethany Young, who was a patient at Radley Sanatorium, who pushed a woman off the roof and blamed it on Charlotte. She used Charlotte's ID to sneak out of Radley with the intent to kill Alison's mother, who was having an affair with her father. She, for some reason, was wearing a top identical to Alison's and made it to the house. She was then killed by Mona, who thought she was Alison, and when Melissa discovered the body, she assumed that Spencer had killed her because she'd argued with Alison and was wandering around with a shovel. So instead of, calling the police, Melissa buried her in the yard. Alison, meanwhile, was hit on the head with a rock by Charlotte, who mistook her for Bethany because identical yellow tops for some reason. Alison's mother then buried her still-alive daughter to protect Charlotte instead of, calling the police or an ambulance or something. This rando psychic lady then dug Alison back up. Mona drove her to the local motel, instead of a hospital, and she assumed the identity of Vivian Darkbloom and disappeared. Until she came home to Rosewood and spun some story about being held hostage. Confused? Yeah, me too, but I'm getting ahead of myself. Pretty Little Liars had a solid cast of characters with their own identities. Aria Montgomery, played by Lucy Hale, was kind of the main one. It was her that did the shush during the opening credits, although it annoyed Hale that her finger was off-center. Me too, girl. Her main thing was that she hooked up with an older guy who turned out to be her new teacher in school, Ezra Fitz, which made it weird and kind of illegal, but the relationship kept going in secret. Hannah Marin, formerly known as Hefty Hannah, played by Ashley Benson, was my favourite character. She was a bit of a klepto, but she had a good heart and was the most likeable of the bunch, I feel. She was also one half of my favourite couple on this show. Spencer Hastings, played by Troy and Belisario, was intelligent, rich, and couldn't stop making out with her sister's boyfriends. Don't get me wrong, Ren is cute, but seriously, stop being such a whore. She had her moments, but I didn't really like her that much. Her backstory became really complicated as the series went on. She was slightly elevated due to her relationship with Toby. Finally, we have Emily Fields, played by Shay Mitchell, who was the jock of the group, being big into swimming and also comes out as gay during the show's early seasons. I really wanted to like Emily, but as time went on, I just cared less and less about her, especially when she didn't factor into a lot of the storylines except for who she was dating. But we can't not mention the Queen Bee herself, Alison De Laurentiis, played by Sasha Peters. I hope I said that right? Peters? I can't get over her being 13 at the time of filming season 1, and she played Alison to such perfection that I wanted to punch her in the face. Seriously, Alison was everything I hated about being in high school. She was mean, manipulative, controlling, self-entitled, condescending. Do I need to go on? She seemed like a totally unredeemable bitch in all the flashbacks, so imagine my annoyance when it was revealed that the dead body wasn't her and she'd been alive and in hiding all this time. No, seriously, fuck you, Alison. So Alison was actually alive, but she wasn't the one who was cyberstalking the girls. She was in the books, but they flipped the script in the TV show, which I think is both good and bad for fans of the books. For a seemingly omnipresent cyberstalker who can hack into all the girls' phones, know their every move and all their secrets, the first A was pretty grounded in reality. Original A was the best A, and after 2 seasons of guessing, it was revealed to be Mona Vanderwall, Hannah's friend who was a victim of Alison's bullying. Between Alison's disappearance and her body being discovered, Mona and Hannah had become best friends, shedding their unpopular status and taking Alison's place as the popular girls in school. However, Alison's apparent death drew Hannah back to Aria, Spencer and Emily, and Mona was pushed to one side. Even in death, Alison was causing Mona heartbreak, so she did something about it. She became A and controlled the girls like Alison had controlled her. Mona was a great character, although it clicked into place for me that she was A during the fashion show. She was the only one who had the means, motive and opportunity to sabotage the show. Not only was I glad that the bullied, underappreciated girl in school had struck back, but also that I was right. Mona won herself a trip to Radley Sanatorium where it was revealed that she was working for someone else. And here goes the A train again. After Mona was outed as A, the show went off the rails as plot threads got tangled and led absolutely nowhere. With the arrival of a new A, the show focused less on interesting storylines and more on throwing everything at the wall and seeing what would stick. It introduced the character of Cece Drake, who after only a few appearances I knew was A. Unlike with Mona, there wasn't a particular episode or event that gave her away, it was just an overwhelming feeling of, well, she's obviously A. But then it was revealed that A was Charles De Laurentiis, Alison's never before mentioned half-brother. But that can't be right because it's Cece, it has to be. Oh wait, they decided to make their lunatic stalker a transgender character! You can't see me facepalming right now, but I assure you that I'm facepalming right now. Why would you do that? There is not enough trans representation in mainstream media, so Pretty Little Liars decided to be progressive by having a trans character and then shit all over that progression by making her the villain. Genius! But one good thing did come out of Cece's reign as A, and that was the doll's house. The 4 main girls are abducted and wake up in replicas of their own bedrooms. This is Charles's doll's house, a prison where the girls are his own playthings and Mona is forced into the role of Alison. Side note, I'm referring to Charles as he right now because that's what the girls call him. I am aware that he is Cece and therefore the correct pronoun would be she, but if I'm referring to them as Charles, I'll be using him, and when I talk about Cece, I'll be using her. When they find Mona in the doll's house, she is dressed in the same yellow top Alison wore the night she disappeared. She's also wearing a blonde wig and will only answer to the name Alison. They are only let out of their rooms if Charles allows it, but every night for a few minutes the power goes down and Mona comes to hatch a plan. She tells them that of course I know I'm not actually Alison, he made me act like that. The girls prepare for the prom, a replica of one held several years ago, where they all have to attend. Mona Alison is named Prom Queen and Charles Prom King. Spencer has been a busy little bee and made a device that would knock out the power. They bust their way up to the surface as they're underground but get trapped in an outside area. Charles closes the door on them and they are stuck outside with no food, no water and no shelter until the following day. When they are let back in, the girls promise him they'll be good. They work on finding a way out while Ezra, Toby, Caleb and Alison work on a way in. After months of being held in the doll's house, they finally get out. They talk about afterwards how they were each forced to pick someone each day to not get food and they could hear screams coming from the other rooms. Amazing! Except they didn't show any of that and the doll's house story lasts exactly 2 episodes. I was so interested in it and how the girls survived there, but they moved along so quickly to focus on other boring bullshit like relationship drama. Give me more doll's house! They could have dedicated a whole season to the story and I would have been so happy. Ugh, lame. The only thing that really came out of the doll's house story was Hannah being a badass and demolishing her room when she got home, and Sarah, the rando girl that was found in the doll's house who ended up living with Emily and using all her shower water. Sarah sucks. There, I said it. The thing is with the doll's house, I like anything psychological and I'm a big fan of the idiots trapped together subgenre of horror. So this storyline was pretty close to that. I wanted to see them work together, to be separated for days at a time. I wanted to see all the mind games and the choices. And it's not just me. Everyone I've spoken to who watched this show cites the doll's house as one of their favourite parts. After Cece was taken into custody, aka Radley, the girls were able to get on with their lives. That's a relief, but hey, let's jump forward 5 years and start the whole thing up again. The liars are all pretty successful, with Aria working at a publishing place with her fiancé Liam, Hannah working in fashion like she always hoped, Emily kind of off doing her own thing, and Spencer helping her mum run for something. I'm not really up to date on American politics. They have all split up from their respective partners. I don't care about Ezra or Paige, but I liked Toby and especially Caleb. This section reminded me a little of Stephen King's It, where all the main characters are able to move on with their lives and become successful away from the trauma of their hometown, except for one. Alison stayed behind, and I'm sorry, who the hell made her a teacher? She didn't even go to school properly. Anyway, they're all dragged back to Rosewood, because it's Cece's parole hearing, and Alison needs each of them to say that they would feel safe if Cece was released. They all play ball, except for Aria, who ditches her pre-written speech to be like, hell no, keep that crazy bitch behind bars because she tortured and stalked us for months on end. Yes, queen! Thank you! Unfortunately, despite this epic power move, Cece is released anyway. Oh well, at least you can go back to wherever you came from and ignore any of this ever happened. Oh wait, no you can't, because the night of her release, Cece wanders into the church and gets herself murdered. Bravo everyone, that went so well. Now the liars are stuck in Rosewood again, and Pretty Little Liars wouldn't be Pretty Little Liars without A cyberstalking them, so here we go again. This new A signs off as AD. Alison De Laurentiis, one would presume, but it's not. Because even though we flew off the rails before, we're going to throw this train right off a cliff and into the completely insane. Alison marries this dillhole who turns out to be a complete psycho who uses a Darren Wilden mask, remember him, to make Alison think she's gone nuts. He then goes on to drug her and psychologically torture her, which is everything you're looking for in a husband. On top of all that, Alison's mum appears to be running around despite being very, very dead. But don't worry, it's just her identical twin sister Mary who had an affair with Spencer's dad. No, seriously, what is it with this shit? Stick with me because we're not quite done. Although I've just got to jump in and point out that Peter Hastings is played by Nolan North, who is an iconic voice actor and most famously portrayed Drake in the Uncharted series of games. Anyway, this new A is super pissed that someone killed Cece and is out for blood. They managed to set fire to Aria's arm using Lucas's smart house, who is a millionaire now because of course he is. Things were much simpler when he was being pushed out of a canoe. Noel Khan, who is a major smug douche nozzle, is on Team A and eek! He got decapitated after Emily punched him down the stairs or something. Anyway, the liars are gifted a board game, which is by far the best part of the later series. It was up there with the Doll's House and I got so excited every time they got it out to play with it. The game was a mini version of Rosewood and each liar had to do a task in order to obtain a piece of the puzzle which would presumably spell out a clue to the identity of A. This sounds so dumb when I say it out loud. Spencer got off easy when all she had to do was visit Toby in the hospital, and she got her birth certificate as an added bonus for being a good girl. Turns out her mother was Mary Drake. No, Peter, that's a bad Peter! But it's not just tasks that this game hands out. It poisons Caleb when he tries to hack into it, and it nearly takes Mona's fingers off when she pokes it. All the while, there is a B story with Alison being pregnant and Emily's eggs being stolen. Alison, of course, gives birth to twins because there's a running theme going on here. At some point, Aria and Ezra get back together and are gonna get married, but the day of the wedding, Ezra and Spencer are abducted by AD, who is Alex Drake, Spencer's identical twin sister that nobody has ever heard of. She's pissed that Spencer got a rich family while she got shipped off to England, where she got such a bad Cockney accent it makes Dick Van Dyke's attempt in Mary Poppins seem Oscar-worthy.
I'd remember if we met, love.
Alex takes Spencer's place and the liars don't notice the difference. But Jenna says she doesn't smell right and Spencer's horse goes apeshit. Toby uses this information to establish that it must be an identical twin. That's the conclusion I always jump to when my friends are acting weird. Both Mary and Alex Drake then get their comeuppance when they are kidnapped by Mona's boyfriend and imprisoned in another doll's house. In France! Because it's apparently a piece of cake to ship two grown women against their will to another country and hold them hostage. Then it's over, and seriously, why did I waste 7 seasons watching this shit? Okay, so there's a hell of a lot to unpack here, and I'm going to be looking at the good and bad of the show, starting from the top. The characters. The characters, as I said, are fine. They obviously wanted to make each character as different as possible from each other, and it's nice to get some flashbacks to see how they've grown over time as people. Hannah is by far my favourite because I think she's the most complex. She has many character traits and issues without being too cluttered. She probably had the biggest character arc, going from being the shy fat girl, side note, she was not fat, but that's what they type her as, to being a rebellious teen, to growing up into a strong-willed woman. I like her interactions with the other characters and her gung-ho approach to problems that arose. She was also pretty loyal, despite Mona turning out to be a bit unhinged. Arya was also pretty complex, with a storyline involving her father having an affair with one of his students, and then Arya hooking up with her teacher. That was the main thrust of her character, but it was the quieter, more subtle moments I liked better, because at her heart she was a really caring person. Unfortunately, I feel Spencer was overdone as a character, with her intelligence and privilege being quite in your face. But it was Emily that was the most underutilised and often forgotten about as the seasons went on. I didn't like how they made her really codependent, and shoving her with Alison at the end made her seem weak. This bitch has caused you nothing but trouble, but you want to have kids with her? Grow a pair, Emily. The relationships. You can't have a show about teenagers without relationship drama, and boy did this show have it in spades. Arya was obviously the front and centre with her taboo relationship with Ezra, which I was not a fan of at all. I didn't think it was a tragic forbidden romance, I thought it was just plain icky. But anyway, the relationship continued and it was on again, off again, on again, off again, more times than Ross and Rachel. However, it did nosedive right off a cliff into the completely unredeemable when Arya discovered that Ezra knew exactly who she was from day one and hooked up with her so he could write a book about Alison's disappearance. There are not enough red flags in the world for that situation. It is also implied that he was with Alison at one point before her disappearance, which would have made her 14 or 15 at the time. I rest my case, officer. But Arya married him in the end, and it's just weird. Also, fun fact, Arya cheated on every boyfriend she ever had during the show, so yeah, why are we rooting for her again? Hannah had Caleb, and this couple was the absolute best. They were the most realistic relationship, but that's probably because they were the both most realistically written characters. They reminded me very much of Willow and Oz, but without the magical werewolf parts. Although things did get a little oogly-boogly in Ravenswood. I think it also helped that they had the most natural chemistry, so it was an easy sell through their performances. Caleb was also really helpful in their quest to find A, being a tech whiz, so it made sense to have him around, and I was glad when he was. However, during the time jump, they broke up, which is fine, it's also realistic, but who thought it would be a good idea to put him with Spencer after we just so happened to bump into her in Europe? Worst idea ever. Hannah and Caleb did reunite and get married in the end, so yay, big points there. Spencer was seriously a pain in the ass. Okay, I get it, I get the Ren thing. But when someone is intelligent, beautiful, and rich, it makes you hate them even more, when they think they can steal other people's boyfriends. The more I sit here and think about it, the more I'm hating Spencer almost as much as Alison. But Spencer did get together with Toby, which stops her from being completely unlikable. Toby and Spencer were pretty opposite, and I think that's why it works so well. Toby sort of grounded her and also wasn't afraid to call her out when he thought she was throwing her privilege in other people's faces. It was hilarious when he joined the police force and accidentally got high on drugged gummy bears. But he was probably the best police officer Rosewood had. Spencer and Toby broke up and Toby got engaged to Yvonne, who couldn't be just some girl. No, she had to be tangled into this mess of a plot and be the daughter of Spencer's mum's opposition in the candidacy. Anyway, Yvonne wasn't protected by the main character shield and she got killed in a car accident with a capital A. Spencer was there for Toby in the aftermath, but they never rekindled their romance. At the time, I remember being disappointed, but upon reflection, Spencer is better off single. Emily had many girlfriends over the course of the show, but none were as great as her first. Maya was played by Bianca Lawson, who I swear has not aged a day since she played Kendra in Buffy the Vampire Slayer 13 years prior. She was able to explore her sexuality with Maya, and the coming out storyline was handled pretty well, I think. I found it interesting that her mother was the one who struggled with her daughter being gay, not her military father. It subverted my expectations, which is always nice. After Maya, it was Paige, who legit tried to drown Emily in a pool. And yet, Emily entered into a relationship with this whack job. I hated Paige, and I hated Emily for sticking with her. She tried to kill you! Although in a completely different role than what I'm used to, Paige's homophobic douchebag father was played by Connor Trenier, my favourite lovable engineer. They thankfully split in season 4. I will say though that one of my favourite moments in Pretty Little Liars was when the four partners come out in little Santa underwear for the girls. Moments of brevity like that are so nice. Alison. I don't know if you've worked this out by now, but I hate Alison. She legit blinded a girl, for God's sake. There is nothing I like about Alison, and I know we're supposed to feel bad when we find out that prior to her disappearance she was being stalked by A, but I couldn't give a shit, honestly. I think that they overdid the bitch queen bee straight out of the gate, and you would legit wonder why anyone would be friends with her. I get it's a trope to have the bitchy popular girl, but Alison seemed so one-dimensionally nasty to me that no matter what story they crafted for her in the later seasons, she was past the point of redemption for me. I think they would have been better off having a popular girl whose dark side was more hidden, which would make the mystery more intriguing as you discovered more about her, but nah, screw this bitch and the red coat she was wandering around in. The first A. Mona was great. I really liked her as a character and as A. I think the way they wrote her as both a victim and an antagonist was really well done. I think she also worked so well because during her 2-season reign, the series was a lot more normal, can we say? The convolution hadn't really dropped into place, and it was all about the mystery of A's identity, rather than the mystery of what the hell was going on. Janelle Parrish portrayed Mona with just the right amount of unhingedness, and walked the line between being incredibly likeable and an absolute nutcase. Her motives as well were just pure pent-up rage from being stifled and bullied for so long, and also the feeling of losing control of your life you've worked so hard to build. I also really like how they keep Mona throughout the series as both a person to be cautious of and someone who could help. I didn't like the whole fake Mona death idea, especially the shot of her looking super dead in the trunk of a car that was there for no reason except to mislead the audience. One of the many problems with the show was the repetition of certain ideas. The death fake-out being one of the most prevalent. Can someone just stay dead for once? Except Emily's dad, because that was legitimately sad. I also really didn't like the ending of the series where Mona was keeping Alex and Mary hostage in their own doll's house. I get that they were going for the whole Mona was the mastermind all along thing, but the execution came off as disingenuous and undid a lot of what made Mona a great character. Sure, have her be the mastermind, but do it in a way that makes sense. The second A. Charlotte/Cece was fine as A, but her motives were all over the place and her backstory was so screwed up. There were many plot holes in her story, from her relationship with Jason to getting in and out of Radley whenever she needed to no one knowing she existed, to having her no ends of funds to do all of her A stuff with a wishy-washy explanation. And you already know that I'm annoyed that they made her trans for shock value. I think what they needed to do for the second A was to have them have a better connection to Mona. Mona, in her drugged state in Radley, told Cece about the A game, thinking she was talking to Alison, and Cece then stole the game from her. That link is tenuous at best. I'm going to stop for a second and point out that I'm having to do a lot of Googling to remember what the hell was going on with the show, and it seems like the internet isn't really clear on what Cece's motives really were. I think this is a result of poor planning. Mona felt planned, whereas Cece felt like a scramble to pick someone to be A. There also weren't any real clues as to the identity of A, whereas with Mona there were. It's hard to solve a mystery as an audience member when the writers don't even know what they're doing. I think the A's should have had a more meaningful progression, with the first A being Mona, a friend of the girls, the second A being closer, Ezra for example, a partner of one of the girls, and the final A be one of the girls themselves, but more on that later. Even though I knew Cece was A, I had no idea why, because her motives were not well established and couldn't be worked out until Cece's backstory and a massive exposition dump happened. Even then it was a hot mess. I would have made it Ezra, seeing as he was already tied up in a dodgy plot point and Cece could have been connected to him. She could have filled the role of the Black Swan, taken by Melissa, while Ezra took the role of A. Failing that, it could have just been Ren and Melissa, because they have always been dodgy and are close enough to one of the main cast to be meaningful. In this instance, Cece would have just been a red herring. The final A. This is the Hastings de Laurentiis family tree. Look at it, it's a travesty. If you have such a complicated backstory for the final antagonist of your show, you've done effed up. There is pretty much zero reason you would suspect one of the liars had a never-before-seen identical twin that nobody knew about. I know there was the bit with Hannah and Toby where Alex apparently switched places with Spencer, but bull effing shit on this big reveal. A was clearly set up to be Arya, and I'll tell you why. This whole thing with the locker is some impossible shit unless it's Arya. Outside of Ravenswood, there is nothing supernatural going on, so it is impossible for Arya to put her hoodie in the locker, walk away for a second, and for it and A to be gone without any of the girls seeing it happen. Also, there is a moment when Arya and Emily break into A's apartment, and Arya says this to Emily.
Hey, help me pull down the Murphy bed.
This is apparently their first trip to this apartment, so how could Arya have possibly known that she was looking at a Murphy bed? Unless this was her apartment and she was A. It would also have been genius because the reveal would have been staring us in the face from day one, because it is Arya who does the shush in the opening credits. I don't care if the script was leaked or whatever, just do what makes sense, not what will shock people into confusion. And besides, I knew AD was Spencer's identical twin partway through season 7 because it was all over the internet. Do a better job at containing your leaks, Pretty Little Liars. The ending. Okay, so AD was Alex Drake, and I can't change that, but the ending was so rushed that they once again wasted great potential. As I said, Alex was revealed to be AD, and she was introduced, discovered, and punished all in the space of 1 or 2 episodes. Lame. What they could have and should have done is have Alex introduced to both the audience and Spencer as she was, and have Ezra kidnapped and locked in the bunker, and had Alex take Spencer's place amongst the liars. Then end the episode there. We, the audience, now know that Alex is in the group and is dangerous, but the characters do not. Over the course of the next, say, 6 episodes, Alex could appear to help the others to track down Ezra as Ren takes over the role as A, keeping the messages going, instead of him being shot and turned into a necklace. During this time, little things could happen to make the liars doubt that Spencer is herself, like Jenna telling them that she smells weird and the horse going nuts. Little things in her behaviour could start to give her away, like the way she is with the babies, and her not being able to remember certain things with Toby. This could all then culminate into a big showdown between Spencer and Alex, and it could end the same way as it did in the actual show, but without the stupid Mona Doll's House thing. Or, if I'd written it, I would have had everyone so confused over who is Spencer and who is Alex that I would have had Mona shoot and kill them both, ensuring that the A-game ends with her as the final victor. The major trouble with the show was there were too many plot holes and plot threads that never got tied up, that left the audience disappointed and let down by the ending of a show that they had invested 7 years of their life to. How could Darren Wilden have been investigating Marion's death when he would have been 11 at the time? What did Maya know?
Miss Arya, you're a killer, not Ezra's wife.
How did the wine mums get out of the basement? Was that really a ghost that Ashley Marin saw on Halloween? This show was overcomplicated for the sake of it, and instead they could have streamlined the story significantly, allowing plot lines to make more sense rather than be so connected but so tangled. Serious planning needed to go into the show, but it wasn't, and that's why it wasted a great premise. So there you have it. Whew, that was a long video. Thanks if you made it to the end. What are your thoughts on Pretty Little Liars? What plot points do you wish were resolved, and who did you think was A? Let me know in the comments below, or come say hi on social media. If you enjoyed this video, then please like, share and subscribe. I'll speak to you soon, and thanks for watching.